Yesterday, something happened that most people alive today have never seen. The supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, the man who has controlled one of the most powerful regimes in the Middle East for 35 years straight, he's dead. He was killed in a joint US Israel strike. Now, your phone is probably full of takes. Twitter is on fire. News channels are doing their thing. Everyone's screaming World War III. But here's what nobody is doing, nobody is actually explaining why this was always going to happen. See, most people are treating this like a chess game they walked in on mid match. They can see the pieces, they can see who's winning, but they have absolutely no idea how the board got here, no idea what opening was played, what sacrifices were made, what the other people's strategy has been for the last 45 years. So today we are going back to move 1. We are reading the entire game, the history, the strategy, the players, the moves, and the questions that should make every thinking person deeply uncomfortable right now. Quick disclaimer, the situation is changing by the hour. Some details will shift, but the patterns we're going to talk about, those don't change. And if I get something wrong, drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to be challenged. That is the whole point. Alright, let's read the board. To understand what really happened this week, you need to go back to one specific morning. November the 4th, 1979. A group of Iranian students, not soldiers, students stormed the US embassy in Tehran and they took 52 American diplomats hostage. Not for one day, not for 1 week, but for 444 days. America, the most powerful nation on earth, sat there and watched. Every rescue attempt failed. Every negotiation collapsed. The President of the United States went on live television, visibly broken, unable to get his own people back home. The most powerful military in human history humiliated by students. Now here's what makes this even more extraordinary. 6 months before this, Iran and America were allies. Iran was ruled by the Shah, essentially America's guy in the Middle East. Western friendly, oil rich, perfectly positioned. Then comes a people's revolution led by a cleric named Khomeini, and overnight the closest ally became the bitterest enemy. And here's the first principles question I want you to sit with. Why do revolutions create the most dangerous states? Because a revolution needs an enemy to survive. It promises everything: freedom, justice, a better life. And when the better life doesn't arrive, and it never fully does, the revolution needs someone to blame, an external villain that justifies why the promise hasn't been kept yet. For Iran's Islamic revolution, that villain became America and Israel, not temporarily, permanently. Theologically, they built it into the architecture of their state. They literally called America the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan, not as insults but as official government positions. This was not politics, this was not a trade dispute you could fix with a better deal. This was identity. The Iranian regime defined its own existence by the opposition of these two countries. You cannot build your nation's entire identity around destroying someone and keep doing it for 45 years and then expect them to make peace with you, right? Fundamentally, at some point, there's going to be one side that is going to end it. Now, before we get to the chess moves, there's one thing we need to understand, because it's the reason the conflict exploded right now and not 5 years ago. Iran was about to build a nuclear bomb. See, uranium is a metal found beneath the earth. Inside that is an atom called U-235, and when concentrated, that atom is what makes nuclear weapons possible. Natural uranium contains only 0.7% U-235, almost nothing. Enrich it to 3 to 5%, you can run a nuclear power plant. Enrich it to 10 to 20%, you can do medical research. Push it past 90% and that is weapons grade uranium. That is a nuclear bomb. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed Iran had crossed 60% enrichment and was accelerating every single day. At 60% and climbing, there was only one destination. Folks, the message was clear. Iran was not building a power plant. They were not doing any medical research. At 60% and climbing, there was one possibility: nuclear. Now, India, Pakistan, North Korea, even Israel are all nuclear powers. Why does the world treat Iran differently? Three reasons. First, Iran's supreme leader has publicly, officially, repeatedly stated that Israel is a cancerous tumor that must be eradicated. Every other nuclear power actually builds for defense. Iran was building one for offense against a country so small that a single nuclear strike could erase it entirely. Second, the Strait of Hormuz. We'll come back to this later, and it actually directly affects every single Indian watching this video right now. Third, nuclear domino effect. If Iran gets a bomb, Saudi Arabia gets one. UAE wants one. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia said it openly. If Iran gets one, we get to have one as well. That's not a Middle Eastern problem, that's a global catastrophe in slow motion. Israel has always followed one rule for 4 decades. No hostile neighbor gets a nuclear weapon. Iraq 1981, Syria 2007, Iran 2026. The only question was never if, it was always when. So here's Iran's core problem. They want to destroy Israel and push America out of Middle East, but they can't attack directly. They'd be finished in days. Israel has nuclear capability. America has the most powerful military ever assembled. A direct confrontation to any one of these countries is actually suicidal. So Iran does something, and I want you to pay very close attention to it because this is strategically brilliant. They don't fight the war themselves, they franchise it. See, over 20 years, they built a wall of fire, a ring of armed groups, all funded, trained, and directed by Iran, encircling Israel from every single possible direction. Here's the map. In the north, Hezbollah in Lebanon, not a militia, a full standing army with 150,000 rockets pointed at Israeli cities. Iran's forward operating base 30 kilometers from Israel's border. Southwest, Hamas in Gaza. You all remember the October of 7th. South, the Houthis in Yemen, firing missiles and drones directly into the Red Sea. And this one hit India directly. Remember when Indian cargo ships were being targeted in the Red Sea? That's actually Iran's hand, just 3,000 kilometers away. And connecting all of it, a land corridor through Iraq and Syria, allowing Iran to move weapons and fighters across 4 countries even without crossing open water. For 20 years, Iran never had to fire a single missile from Iranian soil. Plausibly deniability, right, at an industrial scale. This is actually not terrorism, this is a grand strategy. But Israel actually started dismantling it, brick by brick. Hezbollah's entire senior leadership team eliminated. Hamas's command structure decimated. The land corridor disrupted. The wall of fire Iran spent 20 years building was finally coming down. And when your entire defensive strategy collapses, you're exposed for the first time in 4 decades. The wall fell and Iran was finally standing behind it, completely naked. Now here's the angle that almost nobody is covering, and I genuinely think it's the most important piece of this entire story. Israel did not go into this operation from a position of strength and unity. Netanyahu has been fighting for his own political survival for years. As we speak, he's on trial for corruption, bribery, fraud, breach of trust. His coalition, the most right-wing in Israeli history, is held together by ultra-nationalist ministers pushing for permanent annexation of Gaza and the West Bank. One partner walks away, the government collapses. He governs every single day on the edge of a knife. Layer on top, the hostage families protesting outside his office every single day. There's a pattern in political science, and it's called divisionary war theory. When leaders face serious internal pressure, political survival threats, corruption charges, public loss of confidence, they have a historically documented tendency to escalate external conflicts. Because war does something almost magical for a struggling leader. It unifies the public, it wraps the government in the flag, it makes every critic look unpatriotic. Now, I'm not saying that this is why Israel struck Iran. The security justification is also completely real. Iran's nuclear program was genuinely dangerous. But both things can be true at the same time. A real threat can exist, and a leader's survival instinct can shape the timing and scale of the response. History is full of this. It's not a conspiracy, it's just how power works. First principles question: when does a nation's security decision end and a leader's survival instinct begin? And in a democracy, how do people actually ever know about this? Think about it. The most interesting twist in the story: Trump is back, and Trump's foreign policy runs on one fuel: the credible threat of overwhelming force. See, in the first term, he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, the deal that was actually constraining Iran's nuclear program. Gone. He killed Soleimani in 2020, and he's co signed one of the most consequential military operations in the past 20 years. The message to Beijing or Moscow is clear: America under Trump does not bend. But here's what nobody on the victory lap is saying: every American military base in the Middle East is now a declared target. Tens of thousands of soldiers in Jordan, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait sitting in Iranian retaliation crosshairs tonight. You do not kill a nation's supreme leader and his entire family and walk away clean. The debt gets collected. The only question is when. And while all of this plays out, watch Beijing, watch Moscow. They didn't light into the fire, right? But they absolutely will warm their hands on it. Here's something the breaking news keeps completely skipping over. Iran entered this confrontation from a position of historic internal weakness. The Iranian rial had collapsed, one of the most severe currency crashes of any country in the recent decades. Ordinary family members, people couldn't buy basic goods like eggs, medicines, rent. And started in late 2025, Tehran saw one of the largest anti-government protests since the Islamic Revolution itself. These protests were not about America, not about Israel. The Iranian people were protesting about their own government, the corruption, the repression, the gap between what the Islamic Republic promised in 1979 and what 45 years of revolution actually delivered. Every regime runs on legitimacy, and Iran's was falling from inside, right? Before a single foreign missile was even launched from Iran. The strike didn't just kill a leader, they struck a government already fracturing at its very foundation. And now, a power vacuum. In a country with an active nuclear program and no clear line of succession, it's not a strong Iran that's more dangerous, it's the desperate one. Let's bring this home, because I know what a lot of you are thinking. Yeah, this is happening somewhere far. What does it have to do directly with me, somebody who's sitting in Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi? Everything. Here's why. Let's start with the statistics. 8 million Indians are living in Gulf countries right now. Their remittances are one of the most largest and the most prominent sources of foreign income for our economy. If the Gulf destabilizes, right, those people are going to end up coming home. The income stops. The lands in the household budgets across India. We buy oil from Iran. We build the Chabar port, our strategic gateway into Central Asia, bypassing one of our biggest enemies, Pakistan. It took us years of diplomacy to build this. All of this gone. All of this became very, very fragile suddenly. And here's what nobody says out loud. India has deep defense cooperation with Israel, intelligence sharing, military technology. We are not neutral at all. We just publicly perform neutrality. There is a huge difference. And now, the Strait of Hormuz. This is the one that actually hits the hardest. A narrow waterway, barely 32 kilometers wide, sitting between Iran and Oman. 20% of the entire world's daily cruise oil passes through this one single choke point. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, all exports through this particular route. India imports over 85% of the oil. We feel every rupee of that price increase immediately at petrol bunks, in transportation costs, and in price everything that moves on a truck in this country. This is also why America is truly in this. Not just Israel, it's about who controls the heartbeat of the global energy system. And Iran, with a nuclear bomb sitting on the Strait of Hormuz, can blackmail the entire world economy, including us. Write this down. The more dependent your economy is on a region you cannot control, the more vulnerable you are to wars you didn't start, didn't want, and actually cannot stop. Energy independence is not an environment talking point at this point. It is fundamentally a national survival question every single person should be actually concerned and think about. Alright, I want you to do something different now. I'm going to stop giving you answers and give you questions instead. Because anyone offering clean, confident answers to what is actually happening right now is actually lying or hasn't thought hard enough. Question 1. Does killing a leader even kill an ideology? Bin Laden was killed in 2011, Al Qaeda mutated into ISIS across 3 continents, Soleimani killed in 2020, Iran kept the proxies running without missing a beat. Ideas outlive people who actually carry them. So, what does removing a leader actually achieve? And what does the vacuum in it actually invite? Question 2. Is there a pattern to how empires choose their last fights? The British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Soviet Union, every declining power has a moment. Usually not recognized at that particular time point, but there's a point where it overreaches. That overreach becomes the first chapter of its end. Is America in that moment? Is Iran making its final desperate move? Is this entirely post 1979 order finally collapsing? Question 3. Who benefits from peace never arriving? War destroys life. It also enormously profitable for companies, defense contractors, oil traders, regional powers that actually gain in chaos when the battlefield is filled with blood, shed and tears. Political leaders are also a very fundamental part of this, who need to continue fighting these wars in order to stay relevant. See, when a conflict goes on longer than logic allows, stop asking why the enemy can't make peace. Start asking who specifically benefits from the peace not happening. Follow that one question and you will understand almost every human conflict in modern history. 3 laws, just 3. Law 1. Context is in background. It's the whole story. This war didn't start last week. It started in 1979. Without understanding the decades before an event, you're not doing analysis, you're doing reaction. Law 2. To predict the external, watch the internal. Domestic instability doesn't stay domestic. When leaders collapse at home, they look for exits abroad. You saw it here. You've seen it across 200 years of modern history. Watch the politics, folks, not the military. Law 3. Never let urgency replace death. Right now, the most valuable thing you can do as a person is be somebody who actually understands what is happening, right? Instead of someone who's just seeing the latest headline and drawing conclusions very, very quickly. Reaction is abundant, understanding is rare. Rare things are actually available. Be rare. Now, I want to be honest with you for a second. I find this genuinely unsettling, not as a content topic, but as a human being watching this being unfold. Behind every one of these chess moves, the proxy networks, the nuclear program, the strikes, the retaliation, there are real people. Iranian families who were already suffering before any of this started. Israeli families living under the threat of attacks for years. Soldiers who didn't choose the government that sent them. Civilians who pay for decisions made in rooms that they were never ever invited into. First principles thinking doesn't make any of this easier. It just helps us see it without flinching or twisting the facts. That is, ladies and gentlemen, Power Playbook. I've left you with more questions than answers, and that is on purpose. Anyone who watches something this complicated and walks away with clean certainty, probability, wasn't actually paying attention. Your biggest question, drop it in the comments. Disagree with me? Disagree with something that I've actually mentioned in the video? Even better. Tell me exactly why with your reasoning. That's the comments that I will actually respond to. And if this helped you see the world a little more clearly today, share it with the one person who needs to. See you in the next one.